Hello.
Hi.
Try number 2.
You don't have to tell them that.
No, I do because you excellently got our little stockings out, and
yeah.
they're so nice.
Because it's Christmas on Wednesday.
I know, it's so soon.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't quite feel like Christmas to me at this. I don't know why.
You're
I've been
from
busy.
Buffalo,
I'm working.
New York. It's not snowy.
It's like 60. Yeah, 60 degrees out. It did rain all day today. If this was Buffalo, that would have been a lot of snow.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not, and that's all right. You know, it's a trade-off, but at least I don't have to deal with snow for multiple months. I don't deal with snow at all.
True.
How are you doing?
Good.
You're done with the semester, just a little bit of grading left.
Yeah.
And enjoying your break so far?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah. I don't know that we really have any major plans. We're just kind of enjoying ourselves and relaxing and doing some creative things and dealing with the puppy walking around and making his click clacks.
Little Winston.
And we are done with the first book.
We are. The last chapter.
Yes, but I think we're still planning to do like a finale episode that's more of a summary.
Yes.
And I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited to talk about this chapter. Are you ready to get into it?
I am ready,
All right, cool. So, Juan's ready. Everyone can turn to page 288, The Man with Two Faces. Today's lesson is called Gambits and Sacrifices. We'll start with a synopsis. The chapter starts with Quirrell revealing himself as the enemy. He quickly subdues Harry, tells him how he came to become a follower of Voldemort, and then returns to the last obstacle between him and the Sorcerer's Stone, the Mirror of Erised. Harry, trying to prevent Quirrell from completing his mission, realizes that he should be able to see where the stone is hidden if he looks in the mirror. As he tries to stealthily do so, a horrible voice suggests to Quirrell to make Harry look in the mirror. Harry does so and sees himself putting the stone in his pocket when, to his surprise, the stone actually appears in that pocket. The voice demands to face Harry directly and realizes Harry was lying about not knowing where the stone was. Voldemort is revealed to be subsisting in Quirrell's body and orders Quirrell to attack Harry and take the stone. Quirrell cannot bear to touch Harry, however, and Harry attempts to hold on to him despite searing pain. Harry awakes in the hospital wing to find Dumbledore watching over him. The two discuss the events surrounding the stone and some details of Harry's past. Later, a distraught Hagrid gifts Harry a photo album of his parents. Finally, Harry recovers enough to go to the end-of-year feast, where Dumbledore grants Harry, Hermione, Ron, and Neville enough points to cause Gryffindor to win the House Cup. Harry's first year at Hogwarts ends, and he meets with his family on platform 9 3/4.
Mm-hmm.
We could start with the end of year feast card. Oh, ho, ho, ho. We also have 2 other ones here. Philosopher's Stone, which is a nice card there. And then this one's not going to be very visible, but you can see it actually on our first video where we opened cards. We happened to get this Harry Triumphant card. It's like extremely foiled, so it's hard to see unless you're actually like looking at it kind of off.
Yeah, it's basically a Mirror of Erised.
Yeah, right, that's right. Yeah, that's right. But crazy chapter, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I called it Gambits and Sacrifices.
Yeah, do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so they're chess terms.
Mm-hmm.
The part that always sticks out to me when I reread this book, I don't know about the first couple times that I read it. I think I was just excited by I didn't know the rest of the story, so I didn't pay necessarily as much attention to. Harry is really being kind of tugged around a lot. I mean, the gambit is Dumbledore. Dumbledore is risking Harry's well-being pretty severely at this point. I mean, it's so clear. He reveals himself to be the one who gave Harry the cloak both times and, wanted him to have Harry suspects later that Dumbledore wanted him to have the chance to face Voldemort head on. But that was a risk. I mean, it was a real risk.
Well,
Dumbledore himself says, like, I thought it was too late.
Well, in the hospital wing, he basically says you nearly died. And
Nearly
it's like,
died.
Dumbledore, all of this work, what are you doing?
Yep. And so I think for the first real time for me reading, we get a sense of Dumbledore and Voldemort playing a game here, that they have a long history of struggling against each other and trying to outflank and outmaneuver each other and do this, in response to this, and no one would suspect Quirrell and all this.
Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily remember Dumbledore being so transparent of saying like, hey, you can ask me questions, but I might not answer them. Unless I have a reason to.
Lie.
Yeah.
But I actually think he did lie. But
so like the first question that Harry's like, oh, why does he want me dead? And he's like, I can't answer that.
Yeah. It goes back to some of our earlier themes, which isn't surprising, of like preparation and things like that. Because Dumbledore explicitly says, like, when you're
when
better
you are
prepared.
Older, I know you hate to hear this. When you are ready, you will know.
When you're ready,
that was one of the quotes I wrote down. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. But in the context of what we know about the book, that it's basically necessary and Harry ultimately is at a certain point, I guess, ready. But in terms of, I don't know, we talked about preparation and all of this like manipulation and that sort of thing. And I don't know if it's, I guess like where I'm at with that idea, or just going back to the idea of preparation and readiness, is that you will never know, or you will know, but it's not because like you did a series of things that led you to be ready necessarily. It's just, it's going to happen. Maybe like this inevitable thing.
It's too hard to hide forever.
It's not like you can control it, even though we might have this illusion of like, oh, this was in some sense, like we had a hand in shaping how this person turned out to be. And I don't know if that's like just us over rationalizing the things that we do. But I was frustrated at that quote.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. I mean, look, Dumbledore is it's so complex, right? He's simultaneously, it's understandable, all the maneuvers he's making, all the choices he makes, but it doesn't make him less frustrating from certain points of view, right? It's like, yeah, no. I mean, you can justify it for sure, but you could easily justify like putting the whole truth out there right now. Like a 12-year-old or 11 turning 12-year-old, like who goes through this life isn't that much less prepared than he would be next year if he found out, or next year if he found out. So yes, I think where it gets to eventually is the idea that Dumbledore himself doesn't, he's being a bit selfish himself, right? He knows that there's no mythical readiness, like time when Harry gets to learn certain things, though he plays that for a long time. But he himself is putting it off because he knows the pain that some of that information might cause.
Well, and part of it is he doesn't know how Harry will respond or react to it.
True.
I mean, I imagine that a piece of it is this fearfulness of like, part of Dumbledore's power comes from this like, oh, well, Harry doesn't know, like Harry can't act within his own agency. I feel like this last chapter, I even said to you, I was like, oh, it's only like 20 whatever pages, because I feel like so much happens, but it's not really in detail. There's a lot of like little remnants of, I wrote down a bunch of quotes because I was like, oh, within the context of the whole series, like this is really important, but we don't know that reading this for the first time.
Right.
And so it feels very much like because everything we read is from the perspective of Harry predominantly. It's just like, Harry went through this entire first year at this magical school. There was this giant mystery that we're finally like resolving. And so it's kind of like, yes, we did it. This is the end. Like, I'm happy. I'm even happy to go back home to the Dursleys and like wait for
and
the
next
year.
year will be a normal year.
Yeah,
I love that one.
And it's just it to me was very much, I mean, this is the beginning of Harry's journey, because like all of this crazy stuff happens and it's like, okay, yay. And later on in the further stories that we'll read, it doesn't end so packaged and quick like that.
No, it doesn't.
So, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, this is the most, besides the mirror chapter, that we hear Dumbledore speak, and it's the most personal besides the mirror chapter. So basically twice in this book, he has had moments with Harry where he can talk more openly or more personally about Harry himself. And he's withholding. I mean, and, you know, it is interesting. Like, does Dumbledore have any questions about who Harry is? You know, he's not all knowing, right? Sometimes I think when I reread, I come from the perspective of like, well, I know the whole story. So like, Dumbledore, you fool, like, why don't you just tell him? But we can't necessarily know, like, if Dumbledore said something to Harry now, like how he would react, like you were saying. Would it be the same as when he finds out kind of on his own time or in his own ways, like, you know, through Sirius about, you know, the Marauders, and through whatever it might be, the Order, and through Voldemort himself telling him, revealing different things. And in the graveyard, we see that scene all the time on our TV. Yeah, but it is a satisfying end to the first year. It cracks me up when he says, like, oh, it looks like next year will probably just be a normal year at Hogwarts. I'm like, yeah, that sounds right.
Sure. Sure.
But I was struck this time around by actually something that I hadn't really remembered being said, which was Dumbledore said something to the effect of, like, maybe we'll prevent him from ever coming back.
I also wrote that quote down. I wrote several quotes down because I couldn't choose a single one. But yeah, and if he is delayed again and again, why he may never return to power. The reason I wrote that down, though, was because I wrote a previous quote down earlier from Voldemort, who says, mere shadow and vapor, I have form only when I can share another's body, but there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds. And so that to me was more of like alluding to this metaphorical, like this idea of hatred or supremacy or domination, and how that you don't necessarily need a figure. Like Voldemort he's saying he's shadow and vapor, yet still there are people who hold on to his, I don't know, like his calls and messaging and all of that. And so that can live on. And so when Dumbledore's talking about this like delay, I think what he's speaking to might actually go back to what he says at the end of Year Feast when he's talking about bravery and like standing up for things that are right. And I mean, we have our three. We have Ron getting points. We have Hermione getting points. Harry getting points. None of that is surprising because they're our main characters. And then you have Neville, who's getting that last 10 points for, displaying bravery and standing up to his friends, which we already talked a little bit about of Neville's bravery. But that's kind of this like, so if you think of Voldemort as part of an ideology, and rather than like a very purely evil individual, which I mean we can, but you can also think about how it parallels with other things we deal with in our society. And
yeah, I think you're totally right. The two quotes that you just said, the one about being delayed again and again, and there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds, like that depicts very succinctly what morality, struggles with ethics look like, even within the single person, like needing to struggle against, like, you're going to constantly be in places and in circumstances where you could open your mind to, things that lead you down one path or things that lead you down another path. Make a decision to like resist something or make a decision to give in. And it's not like you've turned down that path and that's it. You always have to revisit it and wonder and think about, have I opened my mind to this type of Voldemort, what he stands for, or am I actually still resisting? Am I doing some of both? This is why went with like a chess theme, which is like there's something here. It's bigger maybe now that we're talking even than Voldemort and Dumbledore. They're just the latest instance of this conversation or game in the most serious sense of gaming. Yeah.
Another connection to previous episodes I had was when Dumbledore was talking about the stone, and he's telling Harry, because basically Harry was like, oh, Nicholas Flamel and his wife are going to die. And he's kind of like, oh my gosh. And Dumbledore is like, the stone was really not such a wonderful thing, as much money and life as you could want. The two things most human beings would choose above all. The trouble is, humans do have a knack of choosing precisely those things that are worst for them. And it brought me back to this idea of muggle problems, magical problems. And framing it as like humans, like we, in our humanity, in being human, there might be these desires that are basically self-destructive. And we kind of explore that through like the different characters with their insecurities, their needs, their desires. There's these like objects, so the Mirror of Erised, and men wasting away, staring into the mirror. So we have these objects that can kind of speak to these fundamental, or when I say fundamental, I mean like things that have existed across generations of humankind, and how that plays out. And it just brought me back to those conversations of this is like the conflicts that we see are not necessarily something specific to the wizarding world, even though there is some sort of distinction of like, oh, there are magical people and non-magical people, and it's like, well, guess what, you're all humans and you all like deal with the same things that cause pain and destruction, and also things that create joy and happiness and love and all of that. So it's just very complicated.
For sure. Yeah, what about the stone? What do you think about? I mean, so the decision to destroy it, or they've already destroyed it, I can't remember it precisely.
Yeah, it was already destroyed.
Is unique. It's a unique. It always struck me as a somewhat. What's that, Winston?
Oh, he growled, yeah.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, maybe we got like somebody at the door
package,
or something.
I don't know.
It always struck me as a somewhat strange resolution. Like it's very nonchalant, right? I mean, there is that like excellent discussion, as you just read some of it, with Dumbledore, and then he also talks about how like death is just the next journey, to the well-organized mind. And there is something odd to me as a reader about the resolution to the stone just being, yep, destroyed it. Like, why didn't you destroy it before?
Right, because you had this whole entire endeavor where you're trying to protect it. Yeah, you're protecting it, or you're moving it from the vault in Gringotts, and then you have to protect it in Hogwarts and all this stuff. And then, I mean, maybe just at a certain point, it's like, you know what, this isn't worth it, because the entire... if there's this grander plan with Harry, this entire plan was put in jeopardy. Like, it's not worth to keep this around. Although, I guess I don't know if Voldemort would know that the stone was destroyed, or whatever. Like,
not
so,
sure,
it does seem a little odd, but it's kind of like...
It's funny that now we're talking about it, and I was thinking Harry as the Gambit, but the stone is a Gambit as well. I mean... Dumbledore is risking the stone. If they could have destroyed it as easily as it seems like they could have, it's it is a gambit. That it starts making me think like this is all part of a strategy where you use the stone almost as a lure in order to have Harry have this experience like sooner rather than later or something like that, bringing it into Hogwarts. Like, why? Yeah. What else do you have?
We have a barking puppy here.
Very surprising.
Yeah.
Winston almost never barks.
He does.
It's only when there's a noise, something out the door.
I was just trying to find some things on Quirrell.
What'd you find?
Well, just a couple of things from the Harry Potter wiki, which I'll link down below. But so Quirrell is actually, he says Lord Voldemort. in his talking.
He does.
About, or to Harry, which is
Oh.
a little strange because Voldemort's literally on his, like, in his body. And he's just like, Lord Voldemort, instead of the Dark Lord or whatever.
Well, so he does. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so he
I didn't
just
notice that.
uses Voldemort's name, which is funny in contrast
Just
to
like
like
Constance.
yeah. Well, Constance from Wizards Unite is a whole different story. We don't know about her, but Dumbledore says to Harry, because Harry catches himself when he starts to say Voldemort, and then he's like, you know who, and Dumbledore's like, no, say his name.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting.
Destiny's Child's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Style.
Exactly. Also, so we learned this from the dialogue, though. Quirrell says that after he failed to get the stone from the Gringotts vault, that Voldemort was like, oh, I need to be closer to you. And so, like, at the point that Quirrell bumped into Harry at the Leaky Cauldron, he didn't have Voldemort there.
That's right.
But by the
That's
time...
why they could shake hands.
Yes. Yeah. So, like, I wrote some like question to myself is like, okay, so Harry must have never touched Quirrell or come into contact with him, like, in the course of school, because would he have burned, you know? Like, it would have been... How are you going to explain that?
Good thing they never bumped into each other.
Plan falls apart.
Oh my God.
You just burned his whole side off. Let's see. Also, the etymology. So I was trying to look at the name also. So his name is actually Quirinus Quirrell, which I'm just like... Quirinus, yeah. From the wiki, Quirinus is associated with the Roman god Janus. So as a name, Janus Quirinus. And so Janus is a Roman god of beginnings and transitions, which seems appropriate for this first book, and is often depicted as two-faced. So one face looking forward to the future and one looking back to the past. And I didn't really look up any imagery, but like just that description I find pretty fascinating if you're like simultaneously or switching back and forth, just looking forward or looking behind, but not like being present. I think like kind of captures this idea of even wanting the stone in the first place, or thinking about like the past, or like I need to destroy Harry, or like I'm scared of my past, or scared of dying, or I don't know. So this I think if that is connected, then that's pretty it fits.
Yeah, definitely.
And then there was also speculation that Quirrell is perhaps a mashup between Squirrel and Quiver, or just like the way that he's
Squirrely.
like, yeah, squirrely, but also like stuttering, and of course we find out that that's all fake.
Yeah, but that's a great reveal. I mean, it's really very satisfying to me as a reader. I've always liked that moment where it's like, oh yeah, faked it.
Yeah, yeah.
If on purpose, like it's all part of a tactic here of faking everyone out and making Snape look, more guilty.
Yeah. Speaking of Snape, so Harry has questions about Snape, and
Yes, he does.
especially
Professor Snape.
Professor Snape.
Harry.
Get it right, Harold.
Yeah, him.
Yeah. Oh, shady Harry, shady 11-year-old.
Adolescence.
Yeah. I really like how when Harry he's bringing up his father, James, and the relationship between his dad and Snape. And Dumbledore's response is like, yeah, they really had dislike towards each other, much like you and Mr. Malfoy. Like, yeah, it seems obvious as for us, like as readers, but I wondered when Dumbledore said that, like how Harry reflected on that later, if at all. If he was, because, Harry throughout this entire book has had it out for Snape this entire time. And so it also made me wonder. So it made me wonder if that comparison to Harry, like the Harry Malfoy relationship, was like Harry was just like, yes, so Snape is like Malfoy, confirmed, like bad.
Yeah, that might have backfired on Dumbledore.
Or if it was like,
analogy.
Okay, you think about like you're really like, this is like, it's not abstracting of like these are two people and they're like characterized a certain way. Like these are actually human people that have a relationship, just like you have feelings towards this person, he has feelings towards you. Like,
and Harry actually looks at Malfoy and like relishes
Yes,
his
yes.
like dismay at the house cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Snape. The relation. Snape's feelings towards Harry have not changed a single jot. I always thought that word was fun.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if it's a UK like phrase. Kind of like, to me, like the word, at least for American English, would be like a bit, not a single bit or not a single like iota. But yeah, for sure. I mean, we have this great kind of wrap up of a single story, but there's all these threads. I mean, it's not over, let alone like the clear and ominous thing of like, well, no, Voldemort's not dead. Like he was just fled, you know. Quirrell is still here, or maybe dead. I don't even remember. But you know, you think next year is going to be normal. I think you might be wrong.
Do you know who you are?
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah.
But I think, do you have anything else on the chapter?
No, the only other quote I wrote down was, what happened down in the dungeons between you and Professor Quirrell is a complete secret, so naturally the whole school knows.
I love
it
that
made me
line.
laugh a lot.
Yeah. Oh, it's so great. Yeah, and then Fred and George send Harry a toilet seat. For reasons passing understanding. Yeah, but I love that quote. Yeah, it's so great. It's so well written. It embodies this idea of a school so well, that line of being like, oh yes, it was entirely secret, so everyone knows. And then it comes back around to some extent, like in book 5 with Umbridge and all her rules and how things are circumvented, and how like you know, you try to suppress something and it's just that
you
that's
can't.
when you grip and it's
You can't do it.
now everyone knows. Yeah. Though it did seem like when he recounted it to Ron and Hermione, maybe
That
there were details that weren't there.
Yeah, for
just
sure.
this. Yeah. Yeah. We know how rumors are, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited though. We did it.
Yeah.
We did it. We have, with our wonderful listeners and viewers, made it through Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone,
depending on which version you read.
We are planning either this Sunday, if we can make it happen this upcoming Sunday, which would be the 29th, to do like a
YouTube premiere.
YouTube premiere and an end of book, kind of a summary, where we will have made a podcast episode talking about the book as a whole, and then be able to watch it with people as premiere if they're around at that time, and chat with them. And yeah.
Otherwise, it'll be uploaded for all the podcast listeners as a regular episode that you can listen to.
So either next Sunday or maybe the one after, we'll see, because we have some other irons in the fire right now. So, but we would like to, I think, just move right into book two, right? Yeah. Without any sort of break. Why take a break? Let's do it. We got some momentum. We're into the next story. We have some wonderful characters coming. Chamber of Secrets.
Miss Ginny Weasley.
Dobby.
We saw her in this book being like, look, Mom, it's Harry Potter.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, Gerald. Oh, man. Yeah. Oh.
She's so funny.
Yeah.
Molly's like, stop pointing.
I know. Oh my God. Oh,
we all know who he is.
Cracks me up.
Yeah.
But I'm excited.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for everyone.
For watching,
listening.
Yeah.
Yeah. And until next time, huh?
Yep.
Okay, Juan's ready.